Hey guys, it is me, Halloween Dan,
I'm ScareDad.
and we are middle-aged men talking about Halloween. And welcome to part two of one of our podcasts where we're just talking randomly about some spooky stuff. So don't forget, before you watch this one, go and check out my buddy's video up on his channel right now. We'll leave the link in the description because part one is up on ScareDad. Is up on ScareDad's channel right now. So go and check it out.
I don't think we should keep that.
Just leave just God, I
Right.
hate that. I hate when you it's more frustrating when you trip over your own tongue. Half of my
Right.
videos I have to spend ages editing me just tripping over my own tongue all the
No,
time. That's
I
the
always
most
think,
annoying bit.
how productive could I be if I could just talk like a
Yeah,
normal human
exactly. If I
being?
could just be coherent, that's all I want to
Right.
do.
Uh,
Okay. So, where do we begin? So now we thought it'd be pretty fun, just as something slightly different to what we usually do. We always talk about creepy things for haunts and stuff. And we've talked about in the past how we do like cryptids and mythical creatures and all that kind of stuff. And how, like, it's a bit of a shame that the industry doesn't grab hold of some of these a bit more often and make them into really cool Halloween props. Distortions is probably the only one who does it slightly on a slightly serious scale. But yeah, one of the best things about Halloween for me is the myths and the legends and the creepy stories. It's what drew me to Halloween in the first place. So just thought it'd be kind of fun to share a couple of weird monster cryptid creatures with one another. And since I'm from the UK and you are from the US, it'd be interesting to hear some of your cryptids and weird creatures. And I thought I'd share a couple of mine with you too and see what you think. We'll compare and contrast. Who's creepier
right.
or weirder? I'll let you go first because I want to hear an American
Okay.
cryptid.
Okay. So one of my favorites, and it's not a local one, but
Mm.
I love the whole Mothman
Oh.
story.
Like Bigfoot, I have heard of Mothman, but I don't actually know much about it, apart
Right.
from it's a moth man.
It's from West Virginia. I think it was reported back in originally in like the 1960s.
Okay.
And basically, the idea behind it is this creature, when this creature is seen, there's some disaster that follows afterwards. He's seen as mostly like this large black creature with big wings, and he's got these like glowing red eyes.
Ooh.
So imagine you're
Oh
driving
my
down the road and you
god.
see this crazy thing, and all of a sudden, as you drive past, it starts flying after you. It's like making this crazy like screeching sound. So the car even got to over 100 miles per hour, and this thing was still
What?
flying behind it, following them. That's how fast they were driving.
Oh
Which, to
my
be fair,
god.
I'd be driving that fast
That's
too,
I
probably,
would be
right?
driving that fast. Oh my god, if there's a giant moth creature.
Yeah.
What the
Um,
hell is that? And this thing's like the size of a guy, right? This is a
yeah,
big thing,
it's
right?
big. Yeah, local newspapers said that they called it a giant owl because it had like a big, like 5 foot wingspan. So this thing's big,
Wow.
right? It's human size, giant wings, with glowing red eyes. So supposedly, though, they said like in the 60s, there's like over 100 people had reports of seeing this thing.
Wow.
Terrifying.
That's terrifying.
The fact that it follows after this person screeching, but it was seen. What was the first disaster? Was it a bridge that went out?
I was just going to say, I think I've heard about a bridge collapse. That's probably the one detail I've heard.
Yeah. So the sighting was right before the bridge collapse.
Wow.
Some people said they didn't think it was connected. Others thought that they did. But I mean, this thing is huge down there to the point where they have like a Mothman like festival every year, and people
Cool.
come dressed up and to hear the tale. And
That's so awesome.
we had friends that had gone to that area that got Saul when they went down like a little Mothman sticker and
Oh,
thing. Like
cool.
it's like a big
So
deal
it's like
down
a
there,
real cult thing in that area. Wow.
right? I want to see when the last
Mm.
sighting was.
So like most of them were in the 60s.
This one says 2024 in Kane County, Illinois.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, they actually have a supposedly a sighting in South Korea. It looks like
What?
there's a sighting in the Ukraine, in Moscow,
Whoa.
but most of them are in the U.S. So
Of
that's,
course.
but yeah, so the idea behind it was they would see this creature and then like a natural disaster would happen afterwards. And people didn't know if it was like, was it trying to warn them of it or was seeing it
Was it? That was the bad
causing
ending.
the natural disaster? Like, because you saw this creature, now you're being punished and this is
Mm,
happening.
weird. Terrifying, though.
Absolutely terrifying. The fact that, they said like over 100 people saw it around that time span. Now, is it one of those things where like, there's this report of the Mothman, and now I see a large bird at night, and I'm like, well, I saw the
No.
Mothman too, or like,
But I don't. How do you confuse a bird with a giant red-eyed man creature? I mean, it's one of the things that I always like whenever I hear a paranormal story of any description or a myth or a legend or whatever, and someone's so that there is confusing something, I don't know, that looks vaguely like that with, oh, I thought I saw a beaver, but actually it was just a big cat. I don't know. And
right,
then there's I saw a giant guy with red glowing eyes flying around. Oh, well, no, you didn't. Actually, it was a heron. It's like it's not that
right.
to me. It's too no. I don't know. I'm a big believer in all this sort of weird stuff. I think there's some credence. If so many people are seeing something,
Right.
that's terrifying. If I was to see that, I would. I don't think I'd leave my house for about a week.
I mean, imagine this thing's chasing you. You're going 100 miles an hour, and this thing's keeping up with you. Like,
No, no
I don't.
thanks.
That's crazy.
No thanks. No
So yeah,
way.
so absolutely terrifying. Now, there's no reports of it actually like attacking or killing somebody. So it followed him,
Mm.
right? And it was
Yeah,
angry, but maybe
chases
it
you,
just
scares the crap out of you.
right. Maybe they like threw garbage out their window, and he's like, "Hey, you polluters! I'm
Hey,
gonna give you your garbage back." Or you drop something, you dropped your wallet, and he's just flying
yeah.
after you. Who knows? Maybe he's friendly,
Maybe he's really conscientious and he's just really trying to be friendly. It's like
right?
Casper, but in giant moth form.
Right?
Yeah,
But
I don't know. Something tells me there's something not right about that.
yeah, but it's interesting that there's still seeing reports, but in completely
Mm,
different area because
yeah.
that's not anywhere near the West Virginia. So,
No, no, that's really weird.
but I
That's
mean, I guess if it's got wings, right, it could
it can fly
go where it
wherever it
wants to,
likes. Maybe it
right?
migrates. Maybe. Hey, yeah. Maybe there's patterns to this. Maybe it goes one place in the winter and another place in the summer.
Kind of makes sense, right?
Maybe that. Hey, that's what
I
we've
mean, that's
just
what
figured
our
out.
elderly do.
Mothman. Yeah,
Our elderly
yeah.
go from
They all
the
go
north
down to
down to the south in the winter.
Florida.
Yep. He's getting older, So hey,
hmm hmm All our elderly go to Spain, so that's why
right,
the Spanish hate us because we just send all our old people there. Just go, stay in the warmth. God,
right.
go there. So do you want to hear a British one? Do you want to hear a creepy
Yeah,
British one?
go for it.
So I've got like three, but I don't have to tell them all. I'll tell you one that weirdly could relate because you just said how Mothman was seen in other countries, right?
Right.
So you may have heard this one. I don't know, but one of our sort of more famous cryptids is a creature called spring-heeled Jack. You ever heard of spring-heeled Jack?
I know the name. I don't know much about him.
Mm.
So
So spring-heeled Jack, you're talking like Victorian times is when his first sighting. So it's in London.
yeah.
And this story, by the way, used to freak me out. I really didn't like this story when I was a kid. It's in the middle of the night, and this woman's at home on her own, and something's like violently banging on her door. And this is like Victorian London, so she's not answering that door, right? This is Jack the Ripper territory here. So she's not
Yep.
answering that door. And she's like, what is it? And she decides she's going to look through the mail slot in the door. And she peeps through, and these glowing red eyes are staring back at her through the door. And then this thing is hammering on the door for the rest of the night. And it only goes when the sun rises the next day. And then from then onwards, all the way right through until the middle of the 20th century, there are these reports of this creature that is tall and black with glowing red eyes that it actually does attack people. And there's lots of reports of this creature just bounding out of trees. It's not funny, but it's also got it's got like Wolverine from X-Men. It's got these long metallic claws that it apparently slashes at people with. And
Jeez.
I know. Like bounds out, like there's a report of like there's like a couple having a nice walk in the park, and this thing bounds out of the trees and attacks them. Then there's like a report of like a horse and buggy type thing on the street somewhere, and it's like a big one with like almost like a bus but pulled by a horse and cart, and like it bounds down onto these people and attacks a whole bunch of people. And then the police give chase, and it bounds over the rooftops of London, and it's seen by hundreds of people. Like there are reports in the newspapers, and for years, London is just sort of plagued by this creature that they give the name of Spring-Heeled Jack because it can jump over walls and over steeples and God knows what else.
That's all in London. Is all the
to begin with. Okay. So they start in London, and then as the decades progress, it starts to head further north out of London, and it starts to come closer and closer to where I live, which is why I always used to get a bit like, oh my God, it's still out there. So it used to, so like from like the 1860s right up to like the 1950s, this thing is periodically seen. And every time it's seen, it's sort of seen a bit further away from London and heading a bit further north. And the last report is like in a cemetery, funnily enough, in a town that's actually not that far away from where I live. And that's the last official report of Spring-Heeled Jack, this very dark, menacing creature with these strange metallic claws and glowing red eyes. And whenever anyone gets too close or sees it, it leaps off. It doesn't fly. It bounds off like a giant kangaroo or something. I don't know. And I don't know. There was just something about that just freaked me out. And people, I don't think there's been any real recent sightings of Spring-Heeled Jack. But maybe he migrated. Maybe he went to America, and that's when people started seeing Mothman.
Right.
I don't know. It's a very weird thing, and that story when I was a kid used to freak me out. I don't know why. Just the idea of this thing that just appears and attacks you for no reason. I don't know.
So good. I would be leaving my house. I'd be like, nope.
No, I don't know. I think it's what gives it some credence is that so many people supposedly saw it, and it was in newspaper articles, and at least some of the people who claimed to see it were policemen, and an officer from the army saw it at one point, and they gave chase after it had attacked someone, and all this sort of stuff. So I don't know. Were they all just on hallucinogens or something? I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one, that one.
That's interesting. That's crazy.
Crazy.
So there's another one that's interesting. That's a little more local. So I'm in Rhode Island, our next state over in Massachusetts.
Okay.
They have an area that's called the Bridgewater Triangle.
Okay.
And basically, it's like a Bermuda Triangle almost, but there's a bunch of weird stuff that happens within these different towns, right? It's like 200 miles. It's a big area. Most of the activity seems to be centered around the Hockomock swamp. Okay. It's kind of like the center around it. But people have seen like will-o-wisps, aliens, Sasquatch, all sorts of crazy things happen there. Ghosts. So yeah, it's an interesting area. But one creature that's there that I think is interesting, and I know Native Americans have talked about it. I think that some of the stories about them come from the Native Americans, but they're the Pukwudgies. Have you heard of them?
No.
Supposedly they have the ability to change how they look, shapeshift, and appear and disappear at will. Okay. So they're kind of like a magical creature, but usually they're described as from the back almost looking like a 3-foot porcupine, but in the front it's kind of troll goblinish, like humanoid, but with like all these porcupine type things coming off the back. Yeah. According to the Native Americans, they were friendly to humans up to a point. I know there's a story about like one guy that kind of harassed one.
Like you do. Like a porcupine mutant creature. And you're like, I'm going to have a bit of fun with this.
Yeah, I'm going to annoy this thing. And then they started not only like playing tricks on people, like at first it'd be like kind of harassing, playing tricks on people. But then there's stories about them kidnapping people, pushing them off cliffs, attacking them with spears and knives.
Holy crap.
So it's a pretty big turnaround from
Just the
this
kind
guy
of,
annoyed me. Let's start pushing him off
I'm going
cliffs
to
and
push it
stuff.
off cliffs. Let's stab a few of them.
They're supposedly seen also in the Bridgewater Triangle.
Creepy.
And I'd actually watched a documentary about it maybe a year back or so. There was the guy walking his dog. He was walking down the street near the woods, and this creature came out. It spoke to him. It kind of like ran the words together.
Here, he wants you.
But basically, it was trying to get the guy to follow him into the woods.
Ooh,
and the dog was freaking out. And, the guy they kind of took off and ran, right? But so even as recent as that, so there's been sightings of these things. And
no.
It makes you wonder, if that guy went in the woods, would have it killed him? Would have it done something else?
I have never heard of that. That is the creepiest thing ever. A porcupine, slight mutant-y, weird creature. No way.
Now, the interesting story about the Hockomock swamp is there was a really brutal war there.
Oh, right.
Back when the people were coming to settle. I think it was between the Native Americans and the white settlers, and really brutal. Like a lot of people died there. And so some people think that it's the amount of tragedy from that,
right,
that created this like portal almost in that area, and that's why you see all this crazy stuff in that Bridgewater Triangle area.
Which makes sense.
But yeah, puck budgies are pretty cool.
I'm going to have to look them up now. I'm interested to see. I want to see a picture of what someone thinks these things look like. That's so creepy.
Yeah.
It's like, from like a UK perspective, I think Native American type stuff is, whenever we hear Native American stories over here, it does sound very, very similar to the sort of Celtic stories we have here that are really ancient and in the land sort of stories. And it's like, I don't know, there must be some correlation there, I always think, between these sort of more ancient cultures and how they viewed the world. I don't know, but I always find it really interesting, that kind of stuff. So I will be looking that up when I get off here. I suppose I'll tell you a bit of a more mythical one, but this one's more local to me. It's a pretty gross one, actually. So this is a creature called Jenny Greenteeth. Yeah, Jenny Greenteeth. I didn't really hear about her until I was probably about 12, when I was in the Scouts, actually. And basically, she is a witch. She's a swamp hag, is what she is. We get a lot of them in the UK, but this is definitely, we get a few of them. But this is one of the creepier ones, because she is a woman, but she's enormous. So she's almost like a giant in her own right. And she lives only in very still pools of ponds and swampy areas, and sometimes lakes, but it's generally when they're covered in like duckweed. So when you get a lot of that duckweed, that's where she likes to hang out. And it's that old thing of, she's like a gross... Have you ever seen Legend with...
Yeah.
And so, do you remember, like, there's a bit with like a gross old swamp hag that's trying to eat? That's Jenny Greenteeth. That's basically it. She's got these horrible sharpened teeth, which are funnily enough green. She's green as well, and she basically lies under the duckweed, waiting for someone who's stupid enough to go and take a dip, and she'll pull you under and eat you. And the first time I ever heard this was, I was on a scout trip, and there was a pond that had duckweed all over it, and the scout leader was like, "Now, guys, we're gonna set up camp." He's like, "Don't go anywhere near that pond, for obvious reasons. We don't want to get eaten by Jenny Greenteeth." And all the kids were like, "What? Who the hell is Jenny Greenteeth?" And then he told us this story, like, it's going dark, and he's telling us about this swamp hag that comes out and eats you if you even dip a toe in this water. And I don't think anyone got any sleep that night. Let's just say that. I mean, everyone was pretty petrified, and the tents that had to be a bit closer to that pond were not. No one was overly happy about it.
You're the first victims.
Yeah, the first victims of Jenny Greenteeth. And She's not one of them creatures that people really see, but she's like so interwoven into the part of the world where I live that you do hear people say, "Oh, watch out for Jenny Green Teeth" and all the rest of it. So she's almost like a presence, if you like. Every time anyone ever goes near a pond with any duckweed on it, everyone's like, "Oh, watch out for Jenny Green Teeth." And she's only really in this locality. She's in Cheshire and some of Lancashire as well, and that's it. It's just round here. So apparently,
you should make it Jenny Green Teeth for your.
Yeah, I have thought about it. I did think
you could
about
it. Make her back covered with that green stuff, right? So kind of like a flat back, and then she kind of comes up like that.
Just oh, that's what I mean.
You could even just be still, just need that up and down,
Yeah. A lovely little swamp hag would be great. A great animatronic. We need a swamp hag. I mean, because that's the thing.
Get those.
No, you don't. You like Lily is obviously a swampy witch, but no, we're talking here some gruesome swamp hag that raises her razor sharp teeth out of the water, and she's you know what I mean.
Right.
That's what we need. And for some reason, there's a lot of them women hanging about the UK. Sorry, I think every region. Every region you go to has its own little gross witch swamp hag thing going on.
If they're an actual creature, right, then it would kind of make sense, right? You got Jenny here, you got Martha over there. Right?
They're just all friends. They get together. They swap stories, recipes of how to eat children. There's another one that freaked me out for years, but she's not as local. She's called Black Annis, right? Don't get that name wrong. Black Annis. And she lives under the roots of an ancient oak tree. It's like a village somewhere in Leicestershire, I think. It's quite far from where I am. But she lives under the roots and weirdly, again, has like razor sharp nails. So she's got long metallic nails. So I don't know what the link here is, but she lives under the roots of this ancient oak tree. And there have been reports of people who've seen her up until like probably the 60s, I reckon. People do say they have seen Black Annis. She's this horrible, almost Slender Man type character. She is. So very tall, very long arms, got these razor sharp nails. And she lives under this oak tree and she eats children. Loves the children. Her thing, though, the creepiest bit about her is that she is said to actually, if you leave your bedroom window open at night, her arms are so long they can just reach in and pluck you out of bed. And she then takes you off to a underground cavern to eat away at you. So, yeah, I'm quite glad as a kid I didn't grow up there. I'm glad I grew up with Jenny Green Teeth rather than Black.
As long as you don't live near a swamp, you're good with her.
As long as you don't live near a swamp, you're fine. You're okay.
Yeah. So one last story I'll share, and it's not really a cryptid, but this is like one of our local Rhode Island legends. There's a grave, so as teenagers, everyone wants to always go see it. It's considered called like the vampire grave.
Oh, okay.
And it's a story about this girl, Mercy Brown. So the story is basically this farmer, George Brown. His wife got sick and died, Mary, and then his daughter, I think was also named Mary, got sick and died. And then Mercy Brown gets sick and died. They didn't really know about tuberculosis, which is probably what it was.
Yeah.
So right away they thought there's a vampire curse on your family.
Something, right.
And so supposedly they exhumed the bodies of the two Marys. They were normal decaying. So then with Mercy, there's two different ones. They either dug up the body, recently buried, or because it was the winter, they didn't actually bury her yet. But supposedly when they dug up the body, she was not very decayed. And his son was sick at the time. Now his son was dying of the same thing. So like any rational person would do, they cut up the body, they burned her heart, and then they made her brother drink the ashes of his dead sister's heart.
Oh my God.
Thinking that she was the vampire that was cursing the family and coming up from the grave and feeding on the brother.
That's extreme.
Yeah. But the brother still died. But that was it. After that, no one else in the family died. So some people justified their action by saying they broke the curse of the vampires on the Brown family.
That is pretty creepy. That's extreme, isn't it?
It's creepy because it's real. Like people really did this.
They really did that. I mean, there are things here in the UK where people will say, "Oh, look at that! Don't go near that grave. It's a vampire grave, and it's got like
Right.
a weird cage over it." And you
Yeah.
go, "Right, okay, maybe they did think it was a vampire." There's one, I want to say it's like somewhere in Staffordshire, and there's actually a huge stake that's just been literally nailed into the ground through the grave
Huh.
to hold the body in the ground. That's the
Right.
idea. I suppose it's a bit rich. Us sat here, in our nice warm home. Can't believe people thought this crazy crap, But I think, in a society where you're basically, it goes dark and you're living by candlelight,
Right.
and I can imagine that it was much easier to believe this kind of stuff.
I mean, think about it. If you're living back then, imagine if someone said, there's these tiny, invisible to the eye things that can kill you, right?
Exactly.
And that's a real thing, right? Those are like germs
Yeah.
and viruses and stuff. So, like,
Yeah.
back then, that one makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You're telling me there's some invisible thing that can
Mm.
jump from one body to another and kill people?
No.
Like,
I mean, my family's Irish, right? So there's some creepy stories, like fairy stories. People think of fairies as these very nice, angelic, ooh, look at the cute little fairies. The Irish don't think that about fairies. They are terrified of fairies. They are frightening things. I even remember people, like there's a guy I know whose family, he remembers his granddad telling him about how they basically executed a woman because it's a terrible story, but this is a true story. The wife went off into the woods. I don't know why she did. She went off into the woods. And when she came back, she was a bit quiet and a bit odd. And so convinced was this society at that time that fairies existed, the husband accused her of being like basically a changeling, like a body double of his wife, that his real wife, it's true, had been kidnapped by the fairies, and the fairies had created like a pod person of his wife. And she'd gone into the village to cause mayhem and mischief, and the husband was like, "You're very quiet," and she's like, "I'm all right," and he's like, "Fairy, fairy, fairy," and they locked her up and executed her. And this is only like in the 1800s. This isn't like hundreds of years ago.
right.
People were terrified of this stuff.
Well, it's probably easier than getting a divorce, right?
Grounds for divorce. He chopped my head off. Come on. And then the Irish wonder why they're all got everywhere's bloody haunted, and they've all got it's like everywhere's haunted. Because you're all chopping each other's heads off because you thought they were fairies and stuff. That's just crazy.
It is funny though, because really fairies were never this like little Tinkerbell type thing. Like throughout most of history, they were kind of jokesters, pranksters, kind of scary. Yeah.
Scary stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Like even now, I mean, I know it's a thing, but people are like, you go in the woods, you see a ring of mushrooms. Oh, don't go in the ring of mushrooms. The fairies will catch you. And it's like, okay. Like as a kid, I would grow up thinking fairies were cool. I was like, oh, cool, I'll go. Like, no, don't.
No,
it's
don't
not
mess
a good
with the fairies.
thing. Don't mess with them. Okay.
It's like, don't talk to the big porcupine guy.
Yeah, if you see a big mutant porcupine guy in the woods, don't make fun of him. Don't question him. Just let him get on with his day,
Right.
Because you might get pushed off a cliff.
Exactly.
Oh, dear. Well, I have got one more. This one is crazy funny, I think. I think this is funny, right? But it's just crazy. Have you ever heard of the hairy hands of Dartmoor?
Nope, definitely not.
It's just mental. This one's crazy. So when we went on holiday we used to go on holiday to Cornwall and Devon quite a lot. It's like in the southwestern corner of England. And it's one of them places. It's just full of myths and legends. It's where King Arthur was supposedly born. And it's just Merlin's. Everything's themed with Merlin. It's just one of them places where everything's like, ooh. And one of the legends is this haunted stretch of road that goes over Dartmoor, which is like really windswept and Heathcliff kind of environment. It's of these disembodied hairy hands that tried to force people who are driving along this section of road off the road, right? Yeah. So like the first reports, like this is relatively recent. Like people still report this to this day. So the first major reports, like in the 1920s, and there's a guy on his motorbike with his daughter in the sidecar. And as he's driving along, he notices that he can't really control the bike and it's doing weird things. And when he looks down, there are these two huge, disembodied, hairy hands on top of his hands, gripping the steering column and trying to force him off the road, which it eventually does. And they get badly injured and all the rest of it. And then there's loads of these accounts. People have forced off the road and it's these hairy hands. My favorite one is there's a couple who's going on holiday and they get to this stretch of road and it's getting late. So they decide to pull over and go to sleep there in they've got a caravan. So they decide to get in the caravan and spend the night before they carry on. And in the middle of the night, the wife wakes up to a strange scratching sound. And as she looks down the caravan to the window at the back, there's just this one disembodied hand crawling up the glass and tapping on the window. And she screams and they get up and they freak out. And I just think that's hilarious. I just think this is something hilarious. It's just like, it couldn't be a ghost or anything. It couldn't be that they see a transient woman in the road. It's these hairy hands grab the steering wheel, force you off the road. And people still say it happens to this day. There are still reports of people. Personally, this part of the world is very famous for something they call scrumpy cider, which is very alcoholic cider. I'm going to say that basically anything before about 1980, there was probably a whole bunch of this going on. And, it was the hairy hands officer.
Right.
A bit
Once
of
it gets out there, everyone says,
yeah,
I wasn't drunk. It was the hairy hands.
I'm not drunk. It was the hairy hands. I'm in shock.
Right.
It's like, I don't know. It's funny. I just find that a really funny story. That
That's hilarious.
There's people like driving, like, the hairy hands. It's like, now don't tell me that wouldn't freak you out if that happened. But
of course it would.
It would. And then there's all these like weird legends around. What are the hairy hands? Who did they belong to? And apparently the one that they think it is, so not far away, there's Bodmin Moor, which has got its a whole bunch of other legends around it too. But there was a jail there, a very infamous jail where the worst prisoners were sent. Apparently, this one particular guy who was very big and very hairy, he managed to, he escaped the prison. They chased him down across the moors. And when they caught him, so angry were they chopped his head off and they chopped off his hands. Why the hands? I don't know. But there you go. They chopped off the hand slice. He's dead. And then he haunts the moors now. Just the hands.
No, I would the head haunt too, right?
I don't know. Just the hands, Maybe
you're driving a motorcycle and you see this head trying to...
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Maybe they just don't notice the head. They're just focused on the hands. It's like jazz hands. I don't know. But I don't know. There's just something about that. It's so... I don't know. There's just something like... I don't think you could go anywhere else in the world. That's one of the things I do love about this country at times. It is nuts. It's just like... There's so many mental things, and that's one of them. It just
But there's so much history there that you got tons of stories,
There's so many. You could go on forever. I mean, practically every stretch of road is haunted, and there's even in the village where I live, Holmes Chapel is not a very well-known place at all, but there's supposedly like the motorway that goes past Holmes Chapel is apparently haunted by Roman soldiers that cross the road, and the cars go, there are a lot of crashes that happen here. And apparently a good few of them, people go, it was the Romans.
the hairy hands.
It was the hairy hands. The hairy hands of Cheshire. I do love that sort of stuff. And it's one of the nice things about it. If growing up here, if you like weird stories and ghost stories and stuff, you are not short for entertainment here. Every place has its weird stories, so it's great in that respect.
That's probably why Halloween wasn't as big over there, is because every day's Halloween. It goes everywhere.
Yeah, that is one of my friends actually said that. He's like, don't you find it ironic, Dan, that you're dressing up your front garden And we literally live down the road from medieval manor houses that actually look like this. Like, there are actual places that look like this. You know, in the village I live, there's a graveyard. It looks like this. What? It's like, yeah, I know.
Right.
I just enjoy. You know, I can't go to the actual graveyard and pop out behind it at people.
Right.
So
No jumping spiders there.
This is no. Could you imagine? This is the next best thing. People are like, oh, look at this beautiful ancient graveyard. Oh my God, what is that? Brilliant. I would love that. And that's it. They're my 3 stories. That's all I have to tell. I could go on forever probably, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, there's tons of them. We could do 10 of those episodes, you know?
There's so many. I love them as well. I love hearing legends and myths and stuff. They're just,
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a true insight into how people think. Like it doesn't matter how high tech we get and how scientifically minded we get. There's still a place for stuff like this because people genuinely do think they see it, and I believe some of them.
Right.
But I just like the fact that it's something, I don't know, I think it speaks to like the core of what it is to be a human, I think, that we have these weird stories and beliefs about things. I don't know, there's just something about it I like.
There's a lot of stuff we don't know yet, you know?
Yeah,
a lot of stuff we still don't understand, so...
Definitely. And I think like UFOs and stuff now, they're just the modern version of cryptids. Like when we, before we knew what lights in the sky, now we look at lights in the sky and we're like, it's aliens. And people once upon a time were looking and going, it's ghosts. It's like...
The will-o-wisp or whatever.
Well, exactly. It's the same thing. We just have given it a different title.
Right.
So anyway, well, I think that'll do. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching today. It's been a good one. I hope you enjoyed listening to our creepy little stories there. It's just something kind of fun and different we thought we'd do. Don't forget, if you haven't watched episode 1 yet up on ScareDad's channel, please go and do so right now because we talk about all the Lowe's props and what we think of them. It's a very good episode, so go and check it out. But from me and ScareDad, thank you so much for watching today.
You were killing it. It was great.
I knew he said, go get ready. I knew he said, go get ready. Just
That's funny on your part.
I nearly said,
spooky.
I nearly said, go get ready.
That's hilarious.
Right, okay.
You just finished standing.
Compose. Right, okay. Anyway, guys, thank you so much again. Go get... No, I didn't. I actually said it. Stop it. I actually was going to say, go get ready, then what am I doing?
That's hilarious. And your closing is way better than mine. Why do you want to say mine?
I'm going to say it. I don't know why I just wanted to say it. Compose. Right.
We got this.
Again. I've got this. I've got the giggles now. I want to laugh now. Right. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it spooky. Bye. That wasn't even as good as what I normally do. I just can't. I'm like flustered. Oh, God. Why do I just want to say your sign off every time?
I don't know. It's one thing to say it when I'm saying my part.
I just want to say it in my own. I don't know why.
You're just going to get it out of your system.
That's what it is.
Spooky season's coming.
Go get ready.